Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 182 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. I'm going to jump right back into working on these camellia models. I just clipped that video, and I want to keep these from being too long. You know, I'd like to keep them around 30 minutes and not get into the longer time. It's aggravating to edit it with my cheap software, and you know, 30 minutes is a long time for anyone to sit and listen to me talk. So anyways, jump right back in and check out these camellia models. And is this cheating? No. This is no different than taking a life mask or death mask off someone and using it for reference. What this will do will help preserve these leaves for me until I can use them. And this is a crapshoot because I don't know that I'm going to get this job. You know, we've been talking, but I've heard so much talk over the years that I don't really have a lot of faith in anyone until we actually get an order, get a commission, and they commit to it, because they think this is going to cost $400 to carve these flowers. And usually I tell them, you better add a zero. A lot of times you got to add a zero and double it for what you want versus what you think it's going to cost, because people just don't understand how expensive this work can be. And where this customer wants a very specific varietal, that's a lot, because he's going to be particularly critical, and so it's got to be more of a portrait than not. Much as I want to not have to do this, this is really the only way I'm going to get to preserve these leaves until I can use them as a good reference. Because I can't stop what I'm doing now to chase pipe dreams. I've had far more people. Now when you do this clay's got to be really soft to go under here in order to blend it, because you got to carry it right up to the edges to try to keep this leaf in a relatively natural position, shape, form, habit, whatever you want to call it. That'll also help marry it really well to the bat or the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep working on this. Do my best to get everything blended really, really well. Be very aware of my keys and my edges so that my edges are really nice. And then we'll do a rubber mold and a really quick, thin rubber mold. It doesn't need to be much. I don't have to worry about a million different things of blocking. I'll just put some little points or tits or whatever on the rubber just so it can lay in the mother. And we'll cast this. This is down and dirty, fast stuff, okay? So I'll maybe back with a little bit of that later. Let me work on this. Now I've got a pair of models. And basically they're just cleaned up to the back edge of the flower. Got to support a little bit more right there, a little bit more right there, just so the edge of the leaf will be thick and not fragile and snap off. Because my goal is to get the profile and to get the detail on the leaves, not as much. I don't care what the reinforcement looks like, because that's a matter to resolve when you're carving. So touch that up just a little bit more on the back side of this one, a couple leaves here, and I'm gonna put some rubber on. Cool deal. All right, I've got a couple of real simple rubber molds on there. I had to fill a little bit of draft on one of them, but I think the rest of it will be okay. There's just a couple spots are a little thick, but still a big deal. I think it'll all cure off pretty well. So we'll let that set and then we'll run some plaster. While we're in this purgatory area, and I think I've edited out the video that I talked about this. These are the models that came back from Dario Student from Harmony Blue. These are some of the ones that were salvaged. And this one's a production. This is a nice one here. That's store-bought, and the rest of these are all homemade. This one may not be. This may be a remnant from a store-bought one, but not that one. The quality's just not there. This is something they made in studio, and I wanted to address this. And if I've already gone over this, I apologize. These things kind of run together. This is a model done by somebody that's very skilled, but I want to show you something that's a critique as to how they treated the bas relief. From 3/4, this is really nice, okay? The problem runs into the planes at the front of the face. When you start looking at this, you should be able to turn this all the way around and it looked completely normal. And the problem with this one is that his lower portions down in here are a little too forward, and when you turn it part way, his eye socket is not right. And you could blend this back a little bit and make it look a lot better. The same thing with the planes of his mouth. They're just a little bit forward, and it gives him sort of a dog snout. The lower part of his face really comes out to meet you, and it shouldn't do that. It's really close, it's not bad. Most of it's really good, but when you get on the side, he tends to get a little long in the snout. And you'll learn as you do these, that's hard to avoid. This is a nice model. It's a great model for an ear. Boy, that's nice to have a nice ear to look at. And the rest of the planes are pretty good, but the way this is done right here is a little awkward. The way his pupil faces down, that's a little awkward. And the way his lower jaw is forward of his eye, that's a little awkward. So just trivia stuff on how you evaluate your own work and what you need to do. All right, let's get back into this plaster. And while I'm working on everything else, I've tuned her up a little bit. Let me see how, I think I'm gonna hang this up so I can explain what I've been doing. See if this is any better. That light bounce, I turned it for the, I put it right where I was, literally right where I was holding it, and it auto bounced and you couldn't see anything. I don't know where I took my Sureform, okay? After I took this apart, after I, unmolded and everything, and you see it, and, she had been out drinking hard, but she'd had a few. You start seeing the little details that you didn't fix, that you should have fixed, that you would have liked to fix. She's not perfect. And I'm not putting this up there so y'all can say, oh, she's so beautiful, and oh, she's so fantastic, and blah, blah, blah. I get it. I think she came out pretty well, but I can see things that I want to fix with it. And that's part of the whole process of doing a model and casting it, doing clay, casting it, doing plaster, doing the full evaluation. You've had real breaks when you can't look at it, okay? And you can't go back and really fix it. So I knew I had trouble with her armature, and I've taken a fair amount off the top of her head. Took off here and off here. That shrunk her brains. Her brains were too big. Her top of her head was too big. It's really hard when you start doing heads and faces to find that balance, because if, especially women, female figures that you do are apt to have fancy hair, okay? They're not just flat, plain hair. And when you have that big volume of hair, it doesn't have that lightness that real hair does. It looks like a big old helmet, and it can look like a big old head, big old skull, too many brains, too much up there. And so you have to find a balance with it. We've had requests for projects in the past where people wanted like a little girl with really curly hair, all puffed out, real, I don't say afro, but big round puffy, just this cloud of curls around her head. Nobody's going to understand that. She's going to look like she's wearing a basketball on her head. It's going to look weird. And so you can't do that. And so just like you couldn't carve this out of stone and have this big long feather sticking out of the hat all by itself, even if I can do it, it'll break as soon as anything happens. Bird lands on it, it'll break. And so you just can't, you shouldn't do it. So I took my Sureform and I worked off volume here, and volume here, because I had done that on the clay after I pulled the mold off the clay. And this is one of the main reasons I like having a reusable mold so much, is that I can pull the mold off the clay and still have the clay. And a lot of times I can fix the clay, tweak these little things, like she needs more volume on her chin. This side's good. Got a little undercut with a little bit of, the fleshy double chin underneath her chin. But I've got to add a little bit here when I carve it, so I'll have to stay up so I can create more of a bulbous, fatty tissue layer here at the base at her chin. And that will help her face a lot. Something that did concern me, I was able to lay her down and work her jawline back where it meets her neck. And I had a little bit of discord right to left, and that made her look weird. You gotta understand, because I took her apart and you can see that her eyes weren't even like I wanted them to be. But when I went on and when I measured stuff, they're pretty much in line with where they need to be. And so it's important to understand what you're seeing. Remember I said, don't just look at it, see it. See what you're looking at. You gotta understand what you're looking at. And so I was able to evaluate that on the clay, and I didn't change the position of her eye. What I did was I impacted things that were visually connected to how I was seeing the eye, okay? Her brow was uneven, right here at her nose, at the bridge of her nose was a little bit uneven. And there's still a little bit that I can't just quite resolve, but I'll get most of it cleaned up, and that helps, okay? This side, because of the way her face is tipped, her head is off, is tilted, this side's automatically going to be higher, okay, it makes sense, right? But this had too much mass on top, and because this was taller and this had a bunch of mass, it made this look even lower on this side of her face. And when I took this off and took this off, it took away that visual noise, especially when I cleaned up her brow or the bridge of her nose a little bit, and it really helped that eye look like it's where it needs to be. And there's a little bit of tweaking I need to do with it. And part of that has got to do with, there should be a little more volume here on her chin. There's not, but I can take care of that. And I did a little bit with her hair up here, so her head's way more even. You know, it's, you know, the size of my head, the size of her head, pretty comparable. The length of my hand on her face and my face, pretty comparable. You know, she's supposed to be life size. She's supposed to be about the same height as me. So, and then my hand, on her hand, my hand's a little bit bigger, and it's definitely thicker, but her fingers are more slender. So that's great, okay? You've got to be able to look at things and see it, not just say, well, I don't know what's wrong with it, and you start changing a whole bunch of stuff, because invariably, especially in the beginning, you're going to change things, move things, attack things that you should have left them alone, buddy. And, you know, changing them on the plaster or the clay, whatever, you can deal with that. You bugger this up on that stone, there's no going back. And what'll happen is her head will get smaller, it'll get further back in the stone, or her neck will get longer as you try to carve it, and all of a sudden she'll have a big long neck. One of the other sculptors, they called us. I went up to see him during coffee break one time, you know, and they had a statue in there that came from China, and it needed to be fixed, and it ended up in his studio to fix it. And it was a 6 foot tall statue, and it had a head the size of a watermelon on it that was gargantuan. And we saw pictures of it, you know, before he worked on it. And it had been repaired. It did exactly what the customer, what the retailer wanted done. He fixed the head. And the new head looked great. The problem was they still wanted it to be 6 feet tall, no matter what. So now the head was clear up to here, and she had a neck like the giraffe women from Africa when they have all those rings stacked up on their neck. And her neck was something to behold. and everybody knew it, but that's what you get paid to do. You know, some of these jobs, they want us to really be experts. They want us to tell them how to do it right. And then there's other jobs, and they say, I want this, I don't care. You know, I want that filet mignon well done, and I want a bottle of ketchup to go with it. And if it isn't crispy crunchy with ketchup all over it, they think it's awful, and none of us would touch it. Same thing with this. Sometimes the jobs you end up doing, they're not what you really wanted to do. So, but I'm pretty happy, a lot happier with her now. She looks a lot more balanced. Her eyes still aren't. I'll have to do her eyes as we carve it. But I think the planes are pretty good. Most of her's in pretty good shape. And I'll add some volume to the chin, and that'll help a lot. With the way her mouth looks, because right now there needs to be more volume here. And instead of taking this off to chase it, I'll just leave this proud when I carve it, and we'll be all set. I can make a little notations on this, and anything wrong with this is mine. I can do anything I want with it. And I went around with a Sureform and just scuffed off the rough stuff, tried to even it up, and it looks pretty good. So that's it. These are all cured up really well. I think there's foam there, but everything seems to be, even the thick sections seem to be cured up enough. So I've got plaster all ready to go, and we'll just start doing them other. Having small models like this is always nice, because you can keep them aside if you feel like it, and have them for overrun if you have extra plaster when you do something, and then you can cast them, and you know, they're easy to share with people. This is half a batch. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. We don't really need to reinforce these. This is just a real simple one. And hopefully we won't have a lot run off the sides because this is kicking over pretty well. And I mixed a little too much, so I'll make them heavier than they need to be. But you'll run into more trouble if you don't mix enough than if you mix a little too much. You'll learn that really well. Yeah, I could have mixed probably half of this plaster, but just didn't want to risk it. That's it. I went ahead, bent my wire up, to embed in the back so I can hang them up. It's a good idea to mark a arrow up or some notation so you know where you're going. Let's see how this comes off. Yeah, see, that lifted right off without any issues. Let's see how the rubber peels. And I got to be careful with this rubber because this was a quick job. I didn't go through and do a bunch of reinforcement. And so any edges are prone to tear. And so but this is about doing it as cheap as I can do it. We really only need to get one pull. We can do souvenirs after, but we really only need one. It looks like I didn't get too many tears. It's coming loose pretty well. I lost an end off of that one and an end there, but even the leaves are manageable. So I'll clean this. Hadn't quite cured right there yet. But that's just undercut reinforcement, so. All right, pretty happy with that for a rush job. We'll have to clean this clay out. And then when we pour it, because I had clay lift on a lot of these edges, I'll let it set a little bit longer. We won't pull it quite as green. But it looks like I should have really good information, okay? So there's my mold. All right, and there's my wire for it. I'll set this up and we'll do the next one. All right, be back in a bit. I'm gonna run some plaster. When you do your mother, it's always a good way to, if you're not sure about what you're going to run, as far as volume, it's always a good way to sort of practice how much you're going to make. See, I made half as much. I was afraid it wasn't going to be enough. It's going to be way more than plenty. Try to get it right up nice to your corners and get it fairly even. I mean, it isn't critical because this is just for you, but you know, this is just for my reference. And don't forget, before it cures, get your hangers in there. And I'll tell you right now, you're going to screw up. You're going to put hangers in on the wrong side. Everybody does it. But the more you do, the better you get, and the better you get, the better you'll do. All right, there we go. Give it a few minutes to take it apart. Let's see if these will come off. There it goes. Usually you'll have a spot where you can just sort of open it right up and it'll just come loose. And now the moment of truth. The leaves look pretty. You can see them all. I'm going to try to work it without getting any of the edges. Feels pretty good. A little bit of loss right there. Well, for the most part, that came out pretty great. And then we'll take, I'm not sure. And I'll just dress it right up to the square edge. Got my hangers, got my hangers on the right side. It's always a aggravation when you do it. I like to just knock the corner out just a tiny bit. Shouldn't have too much of this to remove because it's money, you know. Yeah, boy, that's even if you have to make a note that you lost a little bit of edge on something, having this kind of quality model to go by, because see, even the stem, a couple little breaks in the stem, but even the stem, I know where I'm working from. And so now I can take that and let it dry, hanging on the wall, clean up the plaster that's not necessary. I'm gonna strip this other one real quick. Okay, be right back. That one had more fragile edges, so it had a little more losses on that one, but it still came out pretty well. And we're more concerned with the habit, the structure, than the little tiny details, because I'm going to carve it. You know, that's one of the things you got to understand. To me, it's more important to be able to see how the layout is, how everything looks, than to have an absolutely perfect. This is an infinitely better reference tool than a photograph, than something that you did a quick sketch of, because this is the actual real thing. And if you're smart enough to draw something, you can figure out that, you know, these little fractures on the edge there obviously breaks. Just make the most of it. Man, those look great. All right, and now I've got obverse and the reverse, or top side and the bottom side, and different pieces. And I know that the bud for the flower will be right here, so the blossom would be, you know, at here, or at the tip, at the terminal end, not off to the side. So that's great information to know. All right, so we'll mock these up with a 4.5 inch bloom, 5 inch bloom, which is a lot of blossom, and know what we've got to do to lay this out and fit it on the stone. When I've got time, around everything else, around her crooked face and getting this set up for points. So I'm gonna start on a chassis, mount her up to be able to start pointing. So my name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.